Jake came home late again. The colony sky above was dark red. Glowing with scattered stars, his shift at the repair docks had stretched longer than usual. His hands were greasy, his boots heavy, and his mind half asleep. The shared dorm hallway was quiet. Rows of identical doors lined the walls clean. Metallic and cold, he fumbled for his keycard. Not even checking the number, all he wanted was a hot shower and some sleep. As the door slid open with a soft hiss, he stepped inside. But something didn't feel right. It was warmer in here than usual, and the air had a strange scent like lavender mixed with static. The lights were dim, soft and blue, and the room looked slightly different. Then he saw her. She was standing with her back turned. In front of a mirror, her armor half removed. Her hair flowing like liquid silver down her back. Her skin glowed faintly. Like soft moonlight shining from under her skin, Jake froze. He realized in an instant this wasn't his room. It was Laharis's alien roommate. He had walked into the wrong door. But it was what he saw next that made him forget how to move from her shoulder blades. Something was growing. Thin tendrils of light blue energy curled out, moving slowly like smoke. Her reflection in the mirror showed her eyes, glowing. Bright and afraid, she turned suddenly. "Jake," she gasped, pulling her armor up to cover herself. He stepped back quickly, stuttering, I'm sorry. Wrong room. I didn't mean to." He backed out of the door as fast as he could. His heart pounded in his chest like a drum. The door slid shut behind him with a soft click. Jake stood there in the hallway, frozen. His mind tried to make sense of what he saw. Liari was Virelian, an alien race known for elegance and discipline. They didn't glow. They didn't have strange tendrils coming out of their backs. He walked slowly to the correct door, this time double-checking the number inside his own room. He sat down on the bed, eyes wide open. What was that inside her? Was she hurt? Was she hiding something? Jake remembered the look on her face. She wasn't angry. She looked scared, terrified even, like she had just been caught with something forbidden. He didn't sleep that night, every time he closed his eyes. He saw the glow again, the tendrils, the eyes, the soft light under her skin, and that moment when she called his name not with anger, but fear. The next morning, Jake walked into the common kitchen to get some water. Liari was already there, sitting silently with a cup in her hands. She looked up at him slowly. Their eyes met for a second. They just stared at each other. Then she forced a small smile. "Morning," she said softly. "Hey," Jake replied, pretending nothing was wrong, but everything was wrong. She looked pale, well, paler than usual. Her long fingers trembled slightly as she held her cup. And she kept glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. He didn't know what to say. Should he ask? Should he apologize again? Would she get angry? Would she deny it? Or worse, would she tell someone he saw something he shouldn't? Jake spent the whole day distracted at work. His hands fumbled tools, his focus lost. He kept thinking about her back, the light, the way she gasped his name. What was she hiding in? Why was she scared? That night, Jake couldn't resist. He stood outside her room, staring at the door. No sounds came from inside. But the room behind that door haunted his thoughts. He leaned closer, just listening. Then he heard it. A soft hum like a living machine, pulsing softly like a heartbeat made of static. Jake stepped back. Chills ran down his spine. He had walked in by mistake, but now he was involved in something strange. Something hidden, something not meant to be seen. He didn't know what it was yet. But he was sure of one thing. His alien roommate, Lier, wasn't just another student hiding a secret. She was something more. Something dangerous or something in danger. And it all began with one open door. Jake didn't sleep again, even with his eyes closed. His mind replayed the image. Liari standing there, glowing like moonlight. Her eyes wide with fear, her body wrapped in strange, soft energy. He sat up on his bed, staring at the wall. His fingers tapped restlessly on the blanket. What had he seen? Something from a dream. No, he knew it was real, and now he couldn't stop thinking about her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, not because she was mysterious, but because something was deeply wrong. Varelians didn't glow. Jake had worked with Varelians for 2 years at the docks. They were calm, quiet, dignified. No energy, no tendrils, no hums from their rooms. He picked up his tablet and opened the colony net. Searched everything he could find about Varelian biology. Medical notes, research scans, species anatomy guides. Nothing mentioned anything like what he saw, but one post caught his eye. Buried deep in an old forum thread, a warning: if a Varelian starts to glow, run. No explanation, no replies, just that. Jake stared at the screen, breathing slow. Then his eyes moved to the corner of his room. The wall panel that separated his room from Lieri's. Thin metal, hollow inside, barely soundproof. He stood up slowly, tiptoed to the wall. Pressed his ear against the panel. Silence. Then hum. Hum, soft, steady. Like something alive was breathing through the circuits. He crouched down. Found the small, loose seam where the maintenance bots accessed the wiring. He pulled it open slightly, just a crack. Enough to see light leaking through the other side. Enough to see movement. Jake held his breath and peeked through the gap. What he saw almost made him fall back. Lieri was floating, yes, floating above the floor. Her legs crossed, her eyes closed. The tendrils from her back were longer now. Glowing brighter, they moved gently. Slowly, like they were alive. And then he noticed something else. A strange device hovered near her chest, spinning silently. It projected holograms around her circles. Symbols, glowing red and blue. She was surrounded by alien code, ancient-looking and pulsing like veins. Jake blinked, heart pounding. He didn't understand it, but he felt it. Something powerful was inside her, and it wasn't natural. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open. Bright white-blue light burst from her pupils. She turned her head straight toward the panel. Straight toward him. Jake ducked, gasping. Heart racing like a drum, he scrambled backward across the floor. He thought she couldn't see him, but she had. Her glowing eyes had looked right into his soul. Moments passed, heavy and silent. Then, knock knock. Jake froze. The knock came from his door. He stood slowly, legs shaking. Opened the door carefully, and there she was, Lieri, dressed in her usual academy clothes, long coat covering her body, but her face. Her face was pale, lips trembling. Her silver hair framed her face like a waterfall. And her eyes no longer glowing, but red from crying. "Can I come in?" she whispered. Jake nodded slowly, stepped aside. She walked in. Hands clenched, turned to face him. "You saw it," she said. No emotion in her voice. Jake swallowed. "Yes, I didn't mean for you to," she whispered, looking down. "I thought I was safe here." Jake wanted to ask 100 questions. What is that inside you? Why are you floating? What are those symbols? But instead, he said, "Are you okay?" She looked up, surprised. Tears filled her eyes, and she nodded slowly. "No," she whispered. "But thank you for asking." She sat on the edge of his bed. Shoulders shaking. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said. "But it's changing me." Jake sat beside her, unsure if he should speak. "What is it?" he asked softly. She paused, then reached into her coat and pulled out a small object. It looked like a glowing seed pulsing. "Alive. They put this inside me," she said. "Who?" Jake asked, eyes wide. "The ones who betrayed my people," she said, voice trembling. "They used me as a test. A vessel." Jake felt cold. "You're carrying something inside you. Liari nodded. It's called a core symbiont, she whispered. It grows, learns, connects to your mind, and once it fully bonds, it takes over. Jake's breath caught in his throat. How long do you have? Liari looked at him. I don't know, she said. But I'm scared. Jake, silence filled the room. Outside, the colony winds howled softly. Inside, two roommates sat side by side, and only one of them still knew who she truly was. Jake didn't move. Liari's words echoed in his mind like thunder. Once it bonds, it takes over. He stared at the glowing seed in her hand. It pulsed like a living heart. Warm and dangerous. The room felt small now. Too small for the secret she had just shared. Liari looked fragile, not in body, but in spirit. She gripped the core tightly, as if letting go would mean death, and maybe it would. I don't want this, she whispered. Her voice shook like cold glass. I never agreed to carry it. They forced it inside me. Jake leaned forward, his voice low. Who did this to you? Liara hesitated, her lips pressed tight. Then she whispered. The Syndax Order. Jake had heard of them. Shadow rumors in back alleys and cargo bays. A group of exiled alien scientists and warlords experimenters. Manipulators, they dealt with forbidden tech mixing biology and machines. They said I had the right genes, Liari said. They took me when I was young. Told my family I died in an accident. Jake clenched his jaw, his fists tight. How did you escape? He asked. Liari smiled weakly. I didn't, not fully. I stole a ship during a power failure. Ran until the fuel died. The colony found me floating near orbit. Barely alive. Jake exhaled slowly. He remembered the day she arrived. Quiet, polite, strange but kind. No one knew where she came from. I asked the officials to keep me off the records, Liari continued. I begged to be placed with a human roommate. They thought I was scared of my own kind. Jake's heart sank. You weren't hiding from people, he said softly. You were hiding from what's inside you, she nodded, tears slipping down her pale cheeks. It's growing, Jake, she said. It's learning me. Jake stood, pacing slowly. He couldn't believe that this glowing alien girl sitting in his room was carrying something alive and dangerous. And yet, he didn't feel fear. He felt something stranger protectiveness. Have you told anyone else? He asked. Liari looked up sharply. No, she said. And I'm begging you, don't tell anyone. Jake froze. He saw real panic in her eyes now. If they find out, she said, they'll dissect me. Or worse, send a signal. A signal. Jake asked. To the Syndax, she said. If they learn, I'm still alive. They'll come back. Jake sat beside her again, rubbing his face. You're not safe here, he said. Liari nodded. But it's the only place I had peace. I almost forgot the thing inside me existed. But now it's waking up again. Just then, buzz. The room lights flickered. A low hum filled the air, coming from her chest. The core symbiont had started glowing brighter. Liari groaned and fell forward, clutching her ribs. Jake caught her before she hit the floor. Her body was hot burning. Sweat dripped down her temple as her eyes glowed faintly. It's activating, she gasped. Jake carried her to his bed and laid her down. What do I do? He asked, panicking. Keep me calm, she whispered. Or it'll take over. Jake didn't know how to calm an alien girl with a living weapon inside her. But he grabbed a wet cloth and pressed it to her forehead. He held her hand tightly. I'm here, he said. I'm not going anywhere, slowly. Her breathing slowed, the glow dimmed, her eyes closed. And she fell into restless sleep. Jake sat beside her for hours. Watching her chest rise and fall, he knew now this wasn't just an accident. The glowing room, the energy tendrils, the symbols, this was something far bigger. And he had walked into it by mistake. Or maybe fate had brought him in. A soft knock came at the main door. Jake turned, confused. Was midnight. He walked to the door and looked through the camera feed. A figure stood in the hallway tall. Dressed in black robes, no ID, no face shown. The figure tilted its head toward the camera. Then smiled, slow and cold. Jake's blood ran cold. He closed the feed and locked every bolt. Rushed back to Liari, who was still asleep. But her eyes flicked open, glowing faintly. "He's here," she whispered. Jake's stomach twisted. "Who?" he asked. Liari's lips barely moved as she whispered. "The one who controls the Syndax." Jake didn't sleep. He sat on the floor beside the bed, staring at the door like it might explode open at any second. Liari was awake too, though her body remained still. Her voice was low and cold when she spoke again. "He found me," she whispered. Jake turned to her, eyes wide. "You mean?" "The Syndax." Liari nodded slowly, her glowing fingers twitching under the blanket. "No one knows his real name," she said. "Some call him the Overseer. Others say he was the first one to bond with the core. He speaks without speaking," she added. "He looks into your thoughts and twists some." Jake stood and checked the security panel again. The man in black robes was gone. But the camera feed still showed a strange ripple in the hallway, air-like static that refused to clear. As if something invisible had passed through and stayed behind. He turned back to Liar. "Can we run?" he asked. Liari sat up slowly, pain written across her face. "I have a route," she said. "I planned it long ago in case they found me." She reached into her coat and pulled out a tiny hologram disc. A map projected upward, showing hidden tunnels below the colony. Maintenance shafts, abandoned cargo paths. "Forgotten escape routes," she explained. Jake nodded, determined. "But we have to move before sunrise," she added, "once the station's awake. The Overseer will use people as eyes." Jake frowned. "People?" She looked at him sadly. "He can take minds." Jake grabbed his pack. Filled it with emergency rations and tools. Liari stood with shaky legs. But she moved with purpose. Her glow was dimmer now. Held back by sheer willpower, they moved to the sidewall. Behind his bedwear, a small hatch led into the ventilation system. As they opened it, a loud knock echoed from the main door. 3 times slow, deliberate. Jake's blood ran cold. Liar whispered. "He's testing us." They didn't respond. Didn't breathe. The knock came again. Then silence. Jake crawled into the shaft first. Then reached back to help Liari in. They moved in darkness. The only light coming from her faint glow, every sound echoed metal creaking. Their own breathing, the hum of old fans. After crawling for what felt like hours, they dropped into a dark storage room. Dust coated the floor. Old machines and crates lined the walls. Jake checked the old console. It still had power. He pulled up the tunnel map. Checking their position, suddenly crack. A sharp sound behind them. Jake spun around, nothing there. But Liari was staring at a corner of the room. Eyes wide. "He's close," she whispered. Jake reached for a wrench from his pack, useless. But it made him feel better. They moved quickly now. Opening the door into the old cargo tunnels, these halls were darker, colder, filled with steam and the echoes of forgotten things. They ran, side by side. Liari's steps grew heavier, her glow brighter. "It's waking up again," she warned. Clutching her chest, Jake held her up, urging her to keep going. They stopped in an old repair room, a dead end. Jake slammed the door shut behind them and bolted it. Liari dropped to the floor, panting. "I can't hold it much longer," she gasped. Jake knelt beside her. "What happens if it takes over?" She looked into his eyes, hers now shining white. "You won't be able to stop me." Then boom. The door rattled hard. A second boom, louder. Jake looked at the ceiling, no other exits. The wall beside them rippled like heat waves in a storm. Then he stepped through. The man in black, tall, hooded, his face hidden in shadows. He didn't speak. But Jake felt the words inside his head. You were not meant to interfere. Human, she belongs to us. Jake shouted. She's not yours. The man raised one hand and Jake felt pressure crush his body. He fell to his knees, gasping, his vision blurred. Lieri screamed. Dan, the room filled with light. Blinding, searing white. The pressure vanished. Jake looked up. Lieri was floating again. Eyes glowing like stars. The man staggered back. The core symbiont inside her had activated fully. But it wasn't rage, was protection. Her body pulsed with waves of energy. Shielding Jake from harm, the man growled. You don't control it, he hissed. But Liari's voice echoed like thunder. I do now. She unleashed a blast of Lytra and wild. The man vanished in the wave, leaving only silence behind. Jake crawled to her. She collapsed into his arms. Unconscious, he held her tightly. I'm not leaving you, he whispered. Not now, not ever. Jake stumbled forward. His arms shook from the weight of Liari's limp body. Her skin was hot to the touch, glowing softly under her jacket. Her pulse fluttered against his hand like a bird trying to escape. The cargo room was silent now. No more footsteps. No more pressure in his head. The man in black was gone, but Jake knew better evil like. That didn't just vanish. He looked down at Liari's face. Her silver hair clung to her cheeks, wet with sweat. She was breathing but shallow, too shallow. The blast of energy had saved them but drained her. Jake had no time. He searched the wall behind old crates until he found it a metal hatch. Rusted but still sealed, Liari had marked it earlier on the map. He pried it open with his wrench. Cold air rushed out, thick with dust and the scent of mold. A steep tunnel dropped downward, dark, wet, and full of echoes. This was the entrance to the Undercity. Jake wrapped Liari's arms around his shoulders and climbed down. Step by step, his boots slipped on the slimy metal rungs. When he reached the floor, he almost collapsed. But he didn't let go of her, not for a second. The Undercity was another world. A forgotten layer of the colony built, abandoned and buried. Flickering lights cast long shadows across broken pipes and collapsed beams. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. Echoing like whispers, Jake followed the map. Each corridor felt colder, the air heavier. He heard things shuffles, distant clanks, strange clicking sounds. Maybe old cleaning bots, maybe rats, maybe worse. He didn't stop. He kept moving, one hallway after another. Until he reached an old maintenance room, he laid Liari down on a metal table and tried to catch his breath. Come on, he whispered, brushing her hair back. You're not done yet. She didn't move. But her chest still rose and fell barely. Jake dug through his bag and found the old med scanner. He attached it to her wrist and waited. The screen blinked core, overload host stable but weak. He had no idea what that meant. He touched her cheek gently. You saved me back there, he whispered. And now it's my turn to save you. He looked around the room. Old wires, broken power cells. Cracked panels, nothing useful. Then he saw it. A damaged cryo unit shoved into the corner. Jake hurried over and ripped off the front panel. He reconnected wires, bypassed the main failsafe, and turned it into a makeshift stabilizer bed. Not perfect, but better than nothing. He lifted Liari gently and placed her inside. As the lights activated, her body slowly cooled. Her breathing evened out. The glowing from her veins dimmed to a soft pulse. Jake exhaled with relief. She wasn't out of danger, but she had a chance. Just then, boom, a metal door slammed somewhere far behind him. Voices echoed in the tunnel. Robotic, searching, Jake cursed under his breath. They had found the hatch, and now they were hunting. Not Syndax soldiers worse. Possessed minds. Taken over by the Overseer's will, Jake locked the cryochamber and covered it with broken crates. He grabbed a metal rod and stood by the door. Every sound in the tunnel made his blood freeze. Shadows danced just beyond the flickering light. A face appeared, blank eyes glowing faint red. A young station guard, walking like a puppet. Behind him came two more miners. Janitors, all under control. Their mouths didn't move. But they spoke together in his mind. "Return the vessel, return the core," Jake shouted. "You can't have her." And swung the rod at the first one. The blow landed, but the guard didn't scream. Didn't even bleed. He simply dropped, then stood again. Unnatural, silent, Jake backed up, outnumbered. But suddenly flash, a burst of light shot out from behind the crates. The guards screamed in pain, hands over their eyes. Jake turned. Liari had awakened. Her body glowed like a star caught in a storm. She stepped out slowly, her eyes burning white. "They'll never take me again," she whispered. The possessed guards trembled, then dropped one by one like broken puppets. The Overseer's grip vanished from their minds, and silence returned to the Undercity. Jake rushed to her side. "You're awake," he said. She nodded weakly. "For now, but he's not done yet." She looked up at him. "I can't run anymore, Jake," she said. "He'll never stop hunting me." Jake looked into her glowing eyes and whispered. "Then we stop running." The silence didn't last. Jake knew it wouldn't. Liari stood in the middle of the room, glowing like a broken star. Her breath was heavy, her body shaking. "You burned them," Jake whispered. "The Overseer's link, how did you break it?" Liari closed her eyes and said, "I didn't break it, Jake. The core inside me did." Her voice was deeper now. Not angry, not her usual calm either. It was something new, something with weight. Something not fully her. She placed a hand over her chest where the core symbiont pulsed faintly. "It's not asleep anymore," she said. Jake stepped closer. "Is it hurting you?" "No," she said slowly, "but it's speaking to me now. Whispering things in a language I never learned. It shows me places I've never seen, worlds burning, machines merging with minds." Jake felt a chill crawl across his skin. He looked around the old maintenance room, walls cracked. Lights flickering, they couldn't stay here. The Overseer would come himself next time. What if it takes control again? Jake asked. Liari gave him a tired look. "What if I need it too?" She replied. Jake went quiet. "You said you didn't want it," he reminded her. "I didn't," she said. "But now I see the truth. If I run, it wins. If I fight it, maybe I have a chance to use it instead." Jake didn't like it. He had seen the light in her eyes, the raw power that made guards scream. He had felt it even before that back in her room, when she floated. What exactly is it? He asked. Liari sat on an old bench and pulled up her sleeve. The glowing veins beneath her skin were spreading. Up her neck, down her fingers like circuitry alive. "It's a living machine," she said. "Built by the Syndax from Forbidden Tech, it bonds to the host's nervous system. Brain, even memory. Eventually, it becomes the host." Jake frowned. "But it didn't take you over." "Not fully," she nodded. "Because I fought it when it tried, and now it respects me." Jake stared at her. "You made a deal with it?" "Not a deal," Liari said. "A challenge. I told it if it wants to live, it has to do so with me, not through me." Jake wasn't sure if that was brave or terrifying. Probably both. "Can you control it now?" he asked. Liari shook her head slowly. "I can influence it," she said, "but full control." "No." She looked up, eyes glowing faintly again. "And it's learning fast, suddenly." The door across the room creaked open. Jake turned. Holding up a metal pipe ready to defend, But it wasn't a possessed guard. It was a little maintenance bot, Corched. Limping but still running, it rolled forward, let out a soft beep, and projected a hologram, a live feed of the upper colony. Jake leaned in, his jaw dropped. Ships were arriving black. Sharp syntax design, dozens of them, falling from orbit like knives. "They're here," Liari whispered. "They're done sending messengers." Jake clenched his fists. "They're going to tear the colony apart to get to you." Liari nodded. "And I won't let them." She walked to the center of the room and took off her jacket. Her back glowed with energy, the tendrils more stable now. They hovered around her like arms made of light. "They wanted me as a weapon," she said. "Now they're about to see what I really am." Jake grabbed his bag and stepped beside her. "Then I'm going with you." She turned to him. "This isn't your fight," she said gently. "It is now," Jake said. "You pulled me into it when I walked into the wrong room." He smiled. "And I'm glad I did." Liari smiled back for the first time in days. Not because everything was okay, but because someone still believed in her. Even with a weapon growing inside her, they climbed a ladder out of the Undercity. Jake led the way with a map glowing on his wrist. Above them, the sky burned with fire engines from Syndax ships lighting up the clouds. Panic spread across the colony, sirens blaring at the surface. The Overseer stood at the center square. Civilians knelt around him frozen. Eyes empty, he looked up and smiled. "She's coming," he whispered. "The vessel has accepted the power. She thinks it's hers." He turned to his guards, "But we always planned for that." The sky above the colony burned red and gold. Dozens of Syndax ships circled the atmosphere like vultures waiting to strike. The air was thick with fear. Panic spread across the station as civilians ran for shelter. But at the center of it all, the Overseer stood calm tall, silent and glowing with dark power. Around him, his stolen minds knelt in silence, their eyes empty, their wills stolen. Jake stood beside Liari on the ridge above the landing platform. His chest pounded, his hands trembled, but he didn't move. Liari was no longer just his roommate. She stood like a force of nature, now her silver hair flowing, her body glowing with quiet fury. Jake looked at her with awe. He still remembered the first day she moved in. Quiet, kind, always avoiding eye contact. Now she looked like a goddess of light, forged from pain and fire. "This is your moment," he whispered. Liari didn't answer. She was listening to the core inside her chest. The symbiont pulsed like a second heart. "You are ready," it whispered, "but you must choose. Are you weapon or will?" She stepped forward. Jake followed, even though every instinct told him to run. The Overseer saw them from the square and opened his arms. "Come, child," he said aloud, his voice too calm, too smooth. "You are what we created. You are what we deserve." Liari stopped at the edge of the platform. Jake stood just behind her, his wrench still gripped tight. "No," Liari said, her voice ringing clear. "I was what you tried to create, but now I'm what you fear." Energy exploded from her body in a wave of light. It swept across the square like fire pushing back the mind-controlled citizens without hurting them. The Overseer staggered for the first time, his robe fluttered, revealing twisted skin made of both metal and flesh. "You don't understand," he hissed. "You're incomplete, broken without me." Liari stepped closer. "I'm not yours," she said. "I never was." The tendrils on her back surged outward like wings. She rose into the air, her glow turning from soft white to blazing gold. Jake shielded his eyes, but didn't back down. What he was seeing this wasn't magic, it wasn't madness, it was will. It was a girl who had been used, betrayed, experimented on, now rising with her own power, and she wasn't alone anymore. The Overseer screamed and launched a wave of mental force. The ground cracked, the buildings trembled. Jake felt the pain stab through his skull, memories twisting, visions flashing, but then it stopped. Lyri's energy formed a barrier. Not just around herself, but around Jake too. She turned her head slightly and said, "I told you I wouldn't let them hurt you," the overseer charged, his hands turning into claws of black fire. He leaped toward her, but Lyri didn't flinch. She lifted one hand and time around him, slowed. He froze in midair, trapped between motion and stillness. She walked up to him slowly and whispered, "You made me a weapon, but Jake, he made me human." Her tendrils lit up, and for the first time they sang a sound like crystal wind. She touched the overseer's forehead, and in one final burst of light he disintegrated into dust. Gone. Just like that, the link was broken. The sky cleared. The ships above began to spin out of control and fall away. The stolen mines around the colony collapsed and then gasped awake. The people were free, and Lyri, she fell gently to the ground. Exhausted, her glow fading, Jake rushed to her and caught her in his arms. She was smiling weakly. "It's over," she whispered. Jake nodded, holding back tears. "You did it," he said. "No," she whispered. "We did." They sat together in the center of the quiet square. Light flickered above them from the broken sky. People gathered around slowly. No one spoke. They just watched. They saw a glowing girl with scars and power, and a human boy who never gave up on her. What Jake had seen that night when he walked into the wrong room had changed everything. He didn't just see her glowing skin. He saw her pain, he saw her fear, and he chose to stay. Now she had become more than the Syndax ever dreamed. More than a vessel, more than a weapon, she was a protector. And she had one thing they never planned for: a friend.